you've got to that point, which is nirvana, really. So, yeah, so talk to us about how you've kind of...
music reference.
Oh, she's so derailing today.
She constantly, she's derailing your train from the tracks. That's not fair. To me, we're in quite a scary time, you know. It's the humanity of people that, I don't know, that's the thing that I find inspiring, you know, like, and I don't think that matters what industry you're in. It doesn't matter what you perceive the business story to be. Fundamentally, I mean, unless you work in an industry that's incredibly automated, the human story is the one that's driving it along. And there's so many surprises.
Yeah. Welcome to the Deep Sea Dive, the place where we talk all things culture, change, communications, and coaching and leadership development. I am Lorna Mason. This is
Lottie Dahl.
And this is
Sam Bleazard.
Sam Bleazard, who are you? Introduce yourself.
What on earth are you doing here in our Whitechapel studio?
It's like a different dimension here, as I've said. Yeah, I look after employer brand for Fortnum Mason.
Yeah.
Do you?
I do. Yeah.
I don't know why we're acting surprised. We know that.
We just dragged
It's a lovely thing.
We just dragged him off the street. And we were like, you'll do. You've got a nice green bag. Q.
You promised me. Oh,
a nice green bag.
Are we going there? Are we?
Have you got something in that nice green bag?
I thought, you know, if we're going to sail the 7 seas of podcasting together, we might need something for the journey. So,
and this is a brand congruence.
Well, there's something for each of you in there, and you can sort of duke it out in terms of.
Are they different?
Yes, they're different things. Do you want to have a?
Every time we play rock paper scissors, we always get the same thing because we're literally just one brain. So we're like,
this is so exciting. Thank you so much.
But I've been to see people before, and I always forget to take them lovely Fortnum's things, and I think, you know, I think I must do that consistently.
Oh my goodness.
Because it is a little bit of joy, isn't it?
It is a little bit of joy.
It's like Christmas again. Oh, it really is. I love that's the only time I ever get Fortnum's anything is Christmas.
Oh, wow.
My birthday next week, by the way, in case anyone's interested.
Happy birthday.
It's a free gift. Ooh.
Pistachio and clotted cream biscuits.
Oh, stop.
What's not to like?
And I have salted caramel milk chocolate Florentines. Oh, Sam, you shouldn't have.
You're not allergic to any of these things.
To Fortnum's? Yeah. Absolutely not.
Dying live on air. That'll increase the viewers.
But what a way to go.
Oh,
Thank you.
Is that in shot? Should we put that down there?
I was going to do it on purpose.
What, to block me out?
Yes.
That's where we are now.
No, you see, I thought you would be drinking kind of just tea and coffee
and now
continuously.
You're not sure.
Well, no, I thought you might enjoy one.
You to my bottle of vodka that I keep behind the camera.
You can enjoy the
Florentines with whiskey. Anyway.
So Sam and I go back a number of years. We've kind of been in each other's professional orbits, haven't we? We've kind of been on webinars together and we've seen each other speak at conferences. I think I've actually interviewed you at one of the conferences back in the day as well. Yeah. And we've always realised that we've actually got loads in common from a kind of background perspective and kind of how we see communications. And apart from anything else, we've now since discovered that you and Lorna and studio manager Alex also have a deep love of the artist formerly known as Prince.
Prince.
Yes.
That Prince.
Yes.
The actual artist formerly known as Prince Nelson Rogers. Rogers Nelson.
Yeah.
Sam has a better love of Prince than I do because I just like the music and you know all the facts.
Yeah.
There's a chap I met who has written some great books on Prince.
Right.
And the way he describes it is he says that his wife talks to him and says, I like Prince a normal amount. And I guess that's kind of how it is. Maybe I don't like Prince a normal amount.
I think there's two kinds of musician in this world, right? Being a vocalist, I can kind of say, and Alex, who's sitting just off camera, who's our studio manager and also a musician and has also been in bands with me and much better bands by himself.
Has a podcast.
And also has a music podcast. I have said this to him as well. I think there's the ones who know everything, like that's their specialist subject. They've got deep knowledge of it. I think they're very often guitarists. And then there's the ones who just love music.
Yeah.
And don't have all that deep, and that would be me. So I'll own it though. So you have a deep knowledge of Prince.
But this is just
I
for
guess
clarification.
Yeah.
This is not a Prince
This
podcast.
is not a Prince. What we're actually wanting to talk to Sam today about is storytelling and the power that stories have to connect, to engage, to be remembered. And it's a subject that Lorna and I adore. We work with our clients about the power of stories to engage, to cut through all that corporate nonsense. And we really just want to explore the story of you and talk about the power of stories and give our listeners, or what do you call people who watch, our watchers, our audience? Viewers. What did I say?
We're here to talk about communication.
Yeah, I'm really good at that. And just talk about some of the ways that kind of stories, the power of stories in corporations.
Absolutely.
So just give us let's give us 2 minutes on the story of Sam.
Oh, I didn't know you were going to do this to me.
Sorry. Expect the unexpected.
Oh, yeah. It's quite... in terms of my working life story.
Wherever you want to start.
Well, I'm if I still have my accent, I was born in Edinburgh and I sort of grew up there. Came to London when I was sort of 18 to study.
Dick Whittington.
Yeah, a little bit,
Do you have a cat?
I didn't bring a cat with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know. Just checking.
But I sort of oscillated between Edinburgh and London for a little while. But I've worked here for the last 25 years and it's mainly been employee comms roles. There's been a little bit of marketing along the way. I've been incredibly lucky. I've worked in a really diverse and amazing kind of group of companies and sectors. FMCG with Unilever as a freelancer. I was lucky enough to work in central government, the Cabinet Office.
Lucky, is that being sarcastic?
But to occasionally frequent number 10 Downing Street. 2 spells at Royal Mail. John Lewis I worked at, that was my first kind of retail experience prior to Fortnum's. And then I had a really kind of, a really enjoyable 6 or 7 years in the construction industry, which was actually a very formative time, kind of slightly later in my working career. You know, the thing when you think, I've not seen it all, but I've seen a certain amount, and I've kind of seen most of what I think there is to see. And then I think the combination of construction then rolling into COVID was quite a seismic thing in my life, and I think it kind of affected me in a way I didn't expect, in a positive way. But I think when I came out of the other side of COVID, I changed, I think, quite fundamentally the way I thought about work. And actually, I really zeroed in on the storytelling thing as a focus in my career. I think prior to that, I would never have deigned to call myself a storyteller. I mean, I've
got a great voice for it.
I've always said the joke is a voice for radio, isn't it? That this is being filmed. But,
and it's not true.
Stories we tell ourselves.
But yeah, so that was, I think that was, that was quite a seismic sort of moment for me. And then, I think, I found Fortnum's, they found me. It's like a kind of a bit of a marriage, it's just that thing, isn't it? Like sometimes there's a little bit of serendipity, I think, in career moments, timing just aligns. And
what was the nudge that took you into storytelling via COVID? What was it that kind of pushed you down that road?
I think I'll be really honest and candid with you here, which is that when I was in the construction industry, certainly in the second half of my time there, I really felt like I just had it just felt like a really great moment in my career. I was really found the work fulfilling, the people fulfilling. I really felt I had a good relationship with my boss at the time. And I don't know if it's hubris but I just got to a point where I'd been around the sun several times, I'd seen the strategic objectives many times, or the leadership conference, or the objective setting, whatever that was. And
probably some pillars. There were definitely some pillars involved.
Let's break these pillars.
Yeah.
And it's a classic sort of thing. It doesn't happen often in a career. It maybe happens 2 or 3 times. But I was approached by sort of headhunter about a great role, and and that role didn't work out. And I think I found myself right in the heat, the heat of COVID, right in the centre of it.
Because you were working in an industry that was lots of people still having to work and frontline, or what was the
I think what I remember actually about the end of my time in construction was just being on 12 to 14-hour days, just constant video calls, and just the whole piece of just managing people, interface with the leadership team, FAQs, disseminating government information. And I think a lot of people were really sort of burnt out, and then I sort of pivoted to a different industry, and that didn't work. And then I kind of found myself in, just sort of sitting in my back garden in the sunshine, just kind of wondering what anything kind of meant anymore. And I thought, really, the point I'm telling you this story is because I thought when I go back to work, I'm not going to go back as the old corporate version of me in the classic corporate cycle of strategic objectives, leadership conferences. Yes, there will be a part of that, but I thought I'm going to really sort of hone in on the things that I love, and maybe be a little bit sort of selfish about that, and just try not to boil the ocean, and just really make a difference, in one or two areas where that difference will be felt and impacted. And I met a kind of colleague or a peer of mine one day for a coffee, and I might have told you this story, Charlotte, before, but I was just saying, what do you think? What's the thing you think I'm good at? And she just said, I think you're just really great at telling stories, and and I thought, well, that's really nice, and it was somebody I really respected, so I just thought, well, I'll just kind of make that a stock in trade.
What just strikes me about that is, in individual coaching, there's a concept, it's a Japanese concept called ikigai.
Yes,
which means reason for being.
Yeah.
And I came across that when I was making a very similar pivot in my career. And ikigai, for those of you who don't know, is, keep me honest here, Sam, it's the intersection of 4 concepts, right? So there is the thing that I love, the thing that I'm good at, the thing that the world needs, and the thing I can get paid for. And we spend our lives, the lie we tell ourselves is that we have to do something that hits all of those sweet spots. But if you can find an overlap between 2 of them, a couple of them, then that's okay. And as long as you've got something in all of those little circles, then you've got a reason for being. You've got that ikigai. And what I just heard from what you were saying is that you'd kind of been doing what you were good at and what the world needs and what you can get paid for, but you were slotting in the thing that you love with the storytelling.
Yeah, that's fair, yeah.
Yeah, that's the meaning that I made of that.
I think that's,
lovely.
I agree
really
with
nice.
Because obviously you and I, I've talked such a lot about this, and it's a passion that we share, this ability to tell stories in a way that cuts through. And you've obviously, when you had your kind of realisation that you were a storyteller, and then you got your job at Fortnum, how did you then start to carve out that role where you were becoming the storyteller to amplify the stories of your people?
Well, I went to Fortnum's on a 12-month fixed-term contract, and I went to cover my colleague Vicky's role.
Hi, Vicky.
Hi, Vicky. Hello, Vicky.
Hi,
so
we like shout-outs.
Absolutely. So Vicky was on maternity leave for a year. So I covered employee comms and engagement. And so in truth, when I joined Fortnum's, I didn't know if I would be there longer than 12 months. So there's a sort of serendipitous nature to this kind of thing. I think what happened was I was really enjoying the role.
Which was ostensibly head of employer brand.
Yeah, well, the thing about it was, I hadn't heard the expression employer brand because it's still a sort of relatively new concept in the world of comms and HR, and that's maybe another conversation. But I think what happened was, in parallel to sort of experiencing the job, I knew I had to sort of immerse myself in the world of Fortnum's, whether that was getting to know kitchen staff behind the scenes or people on the shop floor. It was just that really simple thing of saying, I've just joined a business who, on day 2 or day 3, someone says, we have beehives on the roof and we make honey that's sold at 181 Piccadilly on the ground floor. And you think, okay, that's brilliant. And then because it was the tail end of COVID, we've talked about music, how much we love music. There was just this really quirky thing that happened where I think it was a trio or a quartet from Ronnie Scott's in Soho, which was shut down at the time because they were trying to reopen it for COVID. They came into the Diamond Jubilee Tea Salon and played, and I thought, well, I've got to go and experience that. So all these things, and I just started sort of routinely saying, oh, it's Ronnie Scott's jazz trio, it's Beehives on the Roof, and people, they just wanted to kind of know more. They sort of seemed interested in it as a sort of almost like an episodic series. It's like, so I thought, well, I'll just kind of lean into that for a while and go with it. And then, it just sort of became this huge sort of thing. It just spawned its own, it just took on a life of its own. And I think when I came to the end of that sort of 12-month cycle, I began to sort of talk to Fortnums about maybe being the sort of first person there to look after employer brand. It was a thing that other organisations were investing in at the time. And since then, I've met other people, other organisations, people who lead employer brand, and it's really interesting.
Yeah, and so you were kind of going around with your spidey senses up.
Yes.
Like intuitively talking to people as part of almost your onboarding, but as you were going, collecting all of these stories.
Yeah.
What did you then do with those stories? Like, how do you amplify those stories that you hear on the ground?
Somebody made a joke with me earlier, so I just very quickly, I'll tell you this. So,
is it a funny joke? Is it
well, no, actually, it's not. It's maybe not a joke, but it's maybe a sort of humorous observation more. So earlier today, I was in Fortnum Mason's food and drink studio, and they're doing this amazing thing at the moment, which is they call it Skillery Workshop, and it's our most senior chef, Sydney Aldridge, is training all these like junior chefs and all the core fundamentals. So, how to make soups, how to fillet fish, how to debone a chicken, how to sort of prepare eggs in sort of numerous ways. And basically, if I go and cover something like that from a storytelling point of view, I will literally film it from every angle. I'll take hundreds of pictures. It's that classic. You take 100 pictures to get one or two great ones.
And so that sounds like my camera reel.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I'm telling you that is, that one of my colleagues from HR was there, and she said to me, "Oh, you know what you're going to have to do, don't you?" And I was like, "What's that?" She said, "Well, if you don't edit that right this second, it's not going to get done. It'll never get done. It has to be done in the now." And I think the reason I tell you that is that, to your question, I sort of realised really early on at Fortnum's that there's just so much going on all the time, every day, every minute, every hour, retail, hospitality in our restaurants, all the sort of brand moments, the visual merchandising, all the conversation around the brand. You just got to process content almost instantaneously. It's a sort of, I'm almost editing as I go all the time. It's an instant capture thing. And to me, this is just a personal thing, but it has to be processed really quickly because it's only vital and newsworthy in my mind if it's processed in a window of time and which is vital. The thing I used to hate about the corporate sort of world or the corporate comms world is that thing where you shoot some kind of video and it might be a lovely concept, might be a lovely idea, there might be lovely people in it, but you get into like weeks worth of edits and it comes out 6 months later and it's like,
at this point it's lost its relevancy, it's not fresh.
That's death to me.
Overproduced.
Yeah, and it's completely overproduced.
I've died inside, after
this is a completely different concept, isn't it? This idea almost of being like a live documentarian of what it's like to be around here, like culture in action.
Journalism, I mean, I was
going to say journalism is the word that kind of sprung to mind for me. Yeah. And then almost, at that kind of role of a journalist is to then amplify those stories, which is a very, very different lens on internal communications, employer brand, employee dialogue. Really easy to do that at Fortnum's, isn't it? You've got all that history, all those quirks, all that lovely stuff. Ronnie Scott's quartet doesn't pop in into Joe Blogg's paper mill every 6 months, do they? So, I know, and I'm being a little bit provocative, that those things are lovely, but that's not all you do. A lot of what you do is finding the hidden stories. Yeah. The stories about the people, all the stuff that people don't know, and then amplifying that, which is a journalistic skill.
Yeah, and I've spent the bulk of my sort of 25 years, 30 years plus working in employee communications, but it's really interesting. I think I, used the word pivot, but I started to sort of understand that I could maybe exist in the external comm space when I was in the construction industry, because towards the end of the time they were bidding on a lot of things like new hospitals, for example, and just making a film about construction workers that work on hospitals is amazing. I mean, it's like, it's so fulfilling, it's so wonderful. And then what was happening was, not all the time, but occasionally someone from the commercial team would say, that's so powerful, maybe we could use that in a bid for a future hospital. And then you start to understand how you're pulling all that power from inside the organisation, all that emotion, all that sort of resonance, all that sort of, dare I say it, magic. And then you want to sort of amplify it. I mean, you asked about Fortnum's. I mean, I'm just like, it's that classic thing of, you're just a custodian at Fortnum's of the brand for a tiny, tiny little window of time, because you know that it's 318 years old. There's, a multitude of people have told the Fortnum story before you. And I definitely sort of worshipped at the feet of our historian and archivist, Dr. Tanner. She sadly passed away a couple of years back, but she was the most amazing storyteller. I mean, one of the things I did when I joined is I carved out a good amount of time, and I just followed her around for a long time with a notebook, and she would tell me about this incredible stuff from the archive, like a female leather flying helmet from the 1920s, and she would show me these objects and things.
So you found the other internal storytellers. I guess that's something that we talk about quite a bit, is storytelling is like a collective endeavour, right? And we kind of tell ourselves, you just said, I'm not a storyteller, am I? And we kind of all are as humans, aren't we?
Yeah.
One of the things you've just described doing there is finding somebody else who's got the stories and connecting and sharing with them.
Can I just take you back to a point that you were making about when you were working in the construction industry and being able to tell those stories with the hospital bid? And I think and obviously Fortnum is a rich seam of stories, very, very easy to tell, beautiful.
That's what I'm saying. Ronnie Scott's doesn't play
exactly.
in everyone's
And I think the reason that a lot of organisations are afraid of leaning into storytelling as a technique for engagement is because they don't think that they've got a good story to tell. They might work in a particularly stereotypically dry sector.
I hear this all the time.
Yeah, what would you say to those organisations to get them brave to take the leap into storytelling?
No, I think that's a great point. I think, like you guys as well, very occasionally I'm at an external conference or, I'm on a sort of panel and that question comes up all the time. Oh, yeah, but, Fortnum's is so lovely. You got stories coming out of your ears. And that is true. And they say, oh, I just work in finance, or I work in law, or I do whatever it is. Let's say it's something really desk-based and it's not product-driven, or it's not tangible in the way that we're talking about these other industries. I don't kind of buy that, because I kind of feel like if you're really passionate about it, you would find the sort of X factor in anything, because it's the humanity, that's the key. It's just, to me, we're in quite a scary time, We're moving into a sort of a period in sort of history where everyone's worried about being controlled. There are quite a lot of dark forces out in the world. The world is turning in quite a strange and sinister way. And I think that it's the humanity of people that, I don't know, that's the thing that I find inspiring, and I don't think that matters what industry you're in. It doesn't matter what you perceive the business story to be. Fundamentally, I mean, unless you work in an industry that's incredibly automated, the human story is the one that's driving it along. And there's so many surprises within the human story.
What I'm hearing from you, a quality that I'm hearing in you, Sam, is that just innate curiosity, which I think if you've got that in any organisation, you'll find those stories, like that belief that there's humans here and humans are interesting, so I'm going to go and find.
Yeah, I think you've got to find human beings fascinating. I think you've got to be really focused on listening, really focused on capturing. And I think just being kind of amused and having your imagination fired just by people, everyday things, and surprise. I mean, surprise is such an underestimated element, I think, in communications and storytelling,
we talk about that, don't we, when we're talking about storytelling with clients and people in courses, is the element of surprise and difference.
This topic is one that obviously we could probably talk about until the rest of time. But I'm just thinking, Lorna, about the latest Edelman Trust Barometer that we talk about in one of our podcasts, and the onus on leaders to bridge bridge divides between difference, because there's so much difference at the minute, and we're all sat in our little self-reinforcing bubbles.
Yeah.
And we know that stories have the power to connect. They have the power to connect across geographies, across generations, across cultures. And so I think more than ever, organisations harnessing the power of stories right now to help bridge those differences is going to be really fundamental.
Yeah. Lots of leaders, when you say storytelling to a room of people, they kind of think there's like a, some kind of grand, maybe kind of Ian McKellen figure that's going to sort of has all of that knowledge in them and can tell the story and they're wise and everything else. But we're all storytellers and we've all got stories.
Or the opposite way, it's very childlike, like it's going to be like Mary Had a Little Lamb or something like
right.
that.
And that because we put that stuff away, right, don't we? And then we come to work to be serious and professional and everything else. So the workplace is not designed to be kind of fertile breeding ground for that. You have to, kind of, as you say, go sniffing it out and amplifying it. But they do connect us because stories are fundamental human truths.
I think as well, because I was thinking about this, as I knew, obviously I was going to be talking to you, but I think in the sort of age of AI and the age of distraction, stories come from the oral tradition. So that, they're passed sort of orally. And I think it's what kind of surprises and delights me. The thing about stories is that, it's a brilliant story when there's instant recall and you can remember it and you can tell it and you can tell it and you can tell it again. And I think I kind of know when I hear something, even if I'm interviewing somebody for an hour or 3 hours or half an hour, they tell me something and I think, and I've got to capture that like right this second. And then I want to get back to that quite quickly in the edit because I can sort of hear where the sort of golden kernel or the golden thread is. And I think, just to pick up what you're saying, it's because it's part of, the oral sort of tradition and the humanity of it all is, I think, what people are increasingly going to cling on to in these sort of slightly difficult times.
And we also know that people struggle to retain data and facts, but what stories do, and we talked about emotion, is that stories create emotion, and emotion is then stored in our long-term memory because our brain tells them they're important. So they're a really important tool in any organisation's communications toolbox.
Yeah.
I think you've just got to be, I think as you said, you've got to be curious. You've got to want to find those really human stories because, like you said, it doesn't matter what industry you work in. Everyone's got their story to tell.
There's a quote from Tali Sharot that you talk about a lot, which is that data doesn't convince.
Facts and figures are good to find the truth, just not good to convince people of the truth.
Because what we're really looking for is we're missing the human element. That's what Tali Sharot says. We're missing what makes us human, which is the emotion, the connection, which is what stories bring. And that example you gave of construction, right? And I've worked in similar kind of industries. My other half works in construction at the moment, and I hear him on a call, and he's really good at telling the story of what he's doing to his team. He says we're building homes and communities for people, right? But it's just very, very easy. So I hear him on the phone to his, colleagues and seniors and CEO, and it's for those stories to become numbers on a spreadsheet or a line item in a report and disappear down there. And what you've done, which we always encourage our clients to do, is you've gone out to the source of those stories, the humans behind the numbers on the spreadsheet. In construction, that's the people who are putting mortar on bricks, and actually building the hospital, and gone back to the root of what is it we're actually doing here and reminded people of that. And that's not rocket science. It's just kind of let's strip away all of that data and bump.
One point I would like to make as well, the record button is still on, is that I think
squeeze it in. I'll dive on her.
Do you know, this is a really important point. This seems to occur to me a lot. This has been happening to me a lot. I think certainly in the latter sort of part of my career, is that people tell me something deeply personal that neither I think they or I anticipate. I told you guys, I think previously, about this film we made recently called What's in a Name, that a colleague in hospitality, Nola, and my colleague in comms, Vicky, came to me just to ask if I'd like to sort of be involved in it. It was their project, and we were trying to tease sort of elements out of it. And I thought, well, it's terrible. People who weren't born in the UK and, have come into the UK from other countries, and they maybe have long names which sort of English speakers find difficult to pronounce, and people get a bit sort of lazy with that, and then they're mispronounced. And there's a sort of surface misunderstanding. And, you know, some of the stories people told me in and around that just basic question was just really fundamental to who they are, you know.
And I think that ties so beautifully into the idea of using stories to bridge difference. That's just a beautiful articulation of that. If there are 3 things that you could tell our viewers, listeners, watchers about why they should start incorporating stories into their employee comms toolbox, what would you say?
I think the first thing I would say is, what's the story you're not telling about your organisation, if you know what I mean? And I think that's really, really important, because I think everyone sort of thinks, this is the story, this is the story, this is the story. So when I went to Fortnum's, I just thought, wow, this is amazing. But, you know, in week 1, somebody said to me, you know, the core workforce at the time was less than 1,000 people. Someone said to me, there are 60 different nationalities. Yeah. I thought, that's the story.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's one thing. I think it just related to what I was saying a minute ago. I think if an organisation has a story to tell, I think just be prepared to uncover richer and richer stories in greater and greater depth. If you go to sort of explore your workforce and find out more about them, there's a huge depth to the stories they might tell you. So I think that's part of the inquisitive piece. And I think as well, this is probably the challenging bit for anybody who works in employer brand, I think, is just be prepared to amass data and, you know, pull a lot of data together around this. Because a lot of what we do is in the external space, you can sort of measure sentiment, you can see what works, and things that are very people-focused, when people are at the heart of the story, you can sort of see in the statistics and the analysis that those things, you know, do peak high on the kind of engagement meter.
But even if you've maybe not got those mechanisms available, just trust that humanity is what works, right? The data says from your organisation, from the people who know, that's what drives behaviour, drives result.
But I think listening is probably key as well. I mean, I don't know if I would say that's one of the 3 points, but I think...
You can have 4.
I can have 4. Well, I think listening is probably the most important thing, because I'm just constantly sort of listening, you know. My antennae are up all the time. There's no like moment when I'm off. I'm kind of always listening, and I suppose maybe that's like a journalistic impulse, because I'm thinking about things that could actually be brilliant, but that you might not be able to use right this second, right this minute. But, you know, there are things that you can sort of store and come back to that are wonderful about people or the things they do in an organisation as well.
Keep your spidey senses
and because if you're not listening, you're going to stick to that original script that you told yourself, and you're not going to hear the nugget that they've brought to the table.
Exactly, exactly, yeah. Oh, actually, one other point I'd like to make. 5. Okay, now this isn't
Let's not do 5. Let's go 5.
This is more a story. This is more a storytelling principle. I don't know if it relates to.
I like it.
This is a storytelling principle, but it relates to something I said earlier, which is that editing is so important. The older I get, the more I realise that how important editing is.
Don't tell our podcast that.
Is that him?
But, you know, it's just kind of, you have to be so harsh in the edit, because actually I think one of the great things about stories, or great stories, is just what you leave in and what you take out. So I think you've got to be really, really brutal. I think you've got to have quite exacting standards. So I think on one level, people probably look at a lot of this stuff, you know, people say, oh, they're describing that as storytelling, but I think one thing people don't see is the edit, you know, and the edit, in my world anyway, is quite exacting. You know, I've quite kind of exacting standards when it comes to that. And I've got a very particular view on what makes a story great. It's very rarely just thrown out into the world, if you know what I mean, even if it looks like it is.
So a little bit, there's authenticity, but there's also crafting and...
it needs thought.
Getting that balance right.
It needs thought, It does. It does. It needs considered thought. It's nuanced.
Great.
Yeah. Lovely.
Okay.
So much in that. I could have sat on the sofa for another 3 days and
Eating the biscuits and
Eating the biscuits,
chocolate.
making tea, talking stories.
Yeah, thank you. It's
Thank
been,
you for
I knew
having
this
me.
was going to be lovely.
Thank you for
so
having me.
much.
Yeah, phenomenal. Such an interesting
That's great.
story.
Enjoy the
career.
biscuits.
We will.
Yeah, we
You're
will
gonna
do.
you'll struggle,
do.
but you'll
Can we book
somehow.
separate time to talk music?
Yes.
Please.
Oh, yeah.
You're not getting rid of me now,
Oh
Sam.
yeah. No, we'll do that. We're definitely going to do that. We're
Brilliant.
definitely going to do
Thank
that.
you.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Sam,
guys.
from Fortnum Mason.
Sam from Fortnum Mason. That's it. Just one word, Sam.
That's all he is now.
Yeah,
Prince.
like
Prince
Prince.
and Sam.
Yeah.
Madonna.
Exactly.
Cher. Sam.
Yes. One word.